Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I am your host, Sid Bassett. What happens when your predictable life plan takes a detour into the great unknown? Rachel Bayles is an artist who thought she knew her life canvas, but from a husband called to the Broadway stage to the challenges of mental health and faith transitions in her own home, she has had to learn a different kind of mastery, trusting in the master artist, even when the colors don't match the sketch. Rachel is an illustrator, a mother of 5, a woman of tested faith, and today we discuss navigating the nomadic life of a performer's wife, keeping a creative soul alive during the quiet years, and finding peace when your children choose paths you didn't expect. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you, and I'm going to jump back before your mission, kind of growing up, if I could. Your parents were good and faithful parents, I see, in the church. How did that missionary-minded atmosphere growing up shape your identity before you even left the home?
Well, I think number one, growing up in a place where there weren't that many members of the church, we had a decent sized youth program, but there were maybe a handful, a dozen kids in my school of thousands, and um, I really felt like that gave me a chance to solidify my faith because people would ask questions. And I grew up in the Bible Belt. So, there were a lot of people who had funny ideas about what members of the LDS church were like. And so it was a fun opportunity to clarify some things and also to be an example. There was a choir director. We were friends with another high school, well, rivals, but the choir directors were friends, and we would do things together with them, and the 2 choir directors were really good friends, and we heard one time that they were talking about the members of the church, and they said, "Those Mormon kids are sure great kids. It's too bad they're going to hell in a handbasket." And that's what I think, but, it was great, and we were well respected, but we did have to learn how to answer questions. And I felt like that helped me to learn more about my faith. So where the time that I served my mission, I felt like I knew the scriptures really well and I knew doctrine really well. And when people had questions, I felt prepared to answer those.
I didn't even know you grew up in Texas, right?
Yeah,
What part of Texas?
Dallas area.
Okay. I grew up in Houston, and
Did you?
of course, I had this similar experience where I think in any given year I was the only member of the church.
Yeah.
So like you said, we were the church to people. We were the Mormons going to hell in a handbasket. But at least I felt like I had to represent almost everything related to the church, which was a lot of
Yeah.
pressure for a young kid. But no, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that we grew up in the South together. That's
Yeah.
great. So at the age of 8, you said that you actually decided you wanted to be an artist. That's pretty young to
Yeah.
decide a professional career. Tell us about that.
Well, I think it was thanks a lot to a teacher that I had. My homeroom teacher in second grade happened to also be the art teacher for the elementary school. And there was an art contest coming up. This was in Houston, actually. I lived in Cyprus, and the Houston Arts and Rodeo Show. I don't know if you ever went to that, but they had an exhibit for elementary school kids. And I prepared this entry, and my teacher worked with me. We would stay in during recess or during lunch break, and she'd give me little pointers and things that I could try. And I think that was just the first time that I felt like, hey, this is something I'm good at. She sees something in me. This is something I could do, and I love it. So why not? And so that just became my goal. It's what I wanted to do.
We've heard a number of times already of young, either friends or advisors or mentors or parents that saw something in us and what an impact it has for us. And I know you've been somewhat of an educator yourself over the years, and you know now the appreciation of somebody just saying, you've got talent there. Of course, when they told me they were being nice, when they told you they really want to be a part of your journey and your success. That's great. Okay, so you grew up in a home with pretty precocious siblings. Did you always want to serve a mission when you left home or not?
I remember thinking when I was in primary that I definitely wanted to serve a mission. And probably throughout Young Women, I also was thinking of it. I always said, by the time I'm serving a mission, China's going to be open, and that's where I'm going to get called. Well, Hong Kong was open when I served a mission, but I did not get called there. And then I think when I was in college and started thinking more about boys and marriage, I kind of went away from that. And then after one particular tearful, it wasn't really a breakup, it was more of a, "Sorry, I'm not interested in dating you." And I was crying my eyes out. My mom came to me, and she must have been inspired. She said, "Well, have you thought recently about serving a mission?" Because she knew that that was something that I had thought of at one time. And it was just fire over my whole self, and I stopped crying immediately and had to catch my breath. I thought, "Okay, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do." And so from there, that's the course that I pursued, and I'm so grateful for that. I would have married the wrong guy if I hadn't gone on a mission.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't know who the first guy was, but I've gotten to know your second guy, and he's pretty great.
Yeah,
So
I'm
you
pretty grateful
2,
for that.
you both married up, and I love that. So it is interesting, though, at that very young age, even in the early years of college, you had such a relationship with the Spirit that when your mom would even propose that, you felt it so strongly that immediately you knew the direction you wanted to go. And it sounds like that relationship with the Spirit was nurtured over a long period of
Yeah.
time and came back to help you, I think, in the years to come, as we've talked about before this call. So you go on your mission. I think it was described as really hard and really wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that. Now you went to Fresno, is that right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us what that looks like for you. I mean, you don't have to go through your whole mission journey, but really hard, really wonderful. What does that look like?
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like it's important to be upfront about how a mission is really, really hard. If kids go out there thinking that it's all, you know, called to serve playing in the background and people wanting you to talk to them all the time. I mean, I think we already understand that that's not always the way it is, but that's what you want it to be, right? When you go out there.
Yeah.
It was hard. I think I was very homesick, which is a sign that I grew up in a very loving home and I love my siblings and it was hard to be away from them. To be honest, it was also hard to be away from the radio and from the movies that were coming out. And I felt really guilty about that, and we'd go into the grocery store, and I'd hear a favorite song playing over the loudspeakers, and I'd think, "Oh, I'm not supposed to listen to this." But I loved sharing the gospel. I really, really loved talking to people about the gospel. I loved giving discussions. I loved bearing testimony. I had a hard time approaching people. It was really a challenge. I'm kind of a ambivert, I guess. I feel like I don't have a problem standing up and speaking in front of a congregation, but going up to a total stranger and telling them that I have a message from God is hard for me, even though I know that I was a called servant. I was afraid of how they would feel about that and that they would wanna run away, and I didn't wanna make people uncomfortable. So that was probably another one of my hardest challenges. So being homesick and then having to really get outside of my comfort zone with talking to people and constantly having to remember, this is my brother or my sister. This is a child of God. They may not accept what I have to offer, but I've got to offer it. That's what I'm here for.
Love that. Just a couple of things. One was, we'd always tell our missionaries, you have to earn your mission. You want to earn your mission. You don't want it to
Mhm.
be given to you. There's no
Yeah.
participation
Yeah.
awards. You really have to earn it. And the second thing I had to just add is we'd also say we love that you miss home. We love that you are homesick. It's much better than you being sick of home because there's some people who really wanted to leave their home and that
Yeah.
raised other issues. So you were
Yeah.
raised well and you obviously responded well as you went off to serve in your mission. Okay. So, one of the things I really loved is at the very end of your mission, you wrote a long list of goals. And I don't know if that's prompted by the Spirit or just you being a natural sort of, the person that wants to plan ahead. But what were some of those top things you wrote down that sort of
Goodness.
carried
Yeah,
you through the
I
years?
found it. I
Oh,
found
you
the
have it. I
right.
love it.
Yeah, I had to go and look it up. I'm glad I it was right it was in a box that's on top. There's a whole bunch of boxes that we still haven't opened up with books since our last move, but my mom helped me find it. Um, yeah, I it was interesting going through these, and some of them made me laugh, like, always do visiting teaching by mid-month. So ambitious. And then others, and I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I did do that, or I am doing that," and it was really, really encouraging. I think you asked me, as we were getting ready for this interview, what my top thing, or, what was I felt the most important thing on here, and that was it was interesting. I read through them and I thought, I don't know if there's really one thing. I mean, maybe follow promptings. That was on the top of the second page. I feel like that's really important, but I think overall, just the fact that there is a list, that I knew there were things that I was learning, and that was gonna be essential to what I was gonna do in the future. Just the fact that I recognized that I was receiving lessons, not just for now and not just for fulfilling the purpose of my mission, but to get me ready for everything that would follow. And, I've always loved goal setting. It's been kind of a struggle. I've tried very many different methods of setting and trying to keep goals, but I think the most important thing is just that we are moving forward. And even if we're not writing things down in a checklist or a planner, if we're getting up in the morning and we're getting things done, we're accomplishing what we need to. And yeah, I think it's just the momentum of moving forward and taking what we learned today and using it somehow tomorrow.
Yeah, and I love that, if we take the promise of the sacramental prayer to heart and the Spirit is always with us, then if we just get up and get going, then, we just have to follow that prompting as we go along. And we're doing exactly what we need to do and accomplishing God's work through just getting up and going. That's the
Yeah,
hardest part sometimes.
yeah.
So I love that. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. You're home from your mission and you decide to marry a performer.
Well, I
And
didn't decide to marry a performer. I decided to marry a young man that I thought was really great and was going to do something sensible with his life.
I love that. Okay, so talk us through that one. So you thought you
Okay.
were gonna marry somebody who is gonna do something sensible with his life. I
So,
love that. Keep
obviously,
going.
I knew from our first date that he was a performer because I had seen him on stage before I met him in person. So I knew that that was something he did, and I had seen that he was incredibly talented. But in my experience, people didn't do that for a living. That's something you do for fun or on the side, but it's not something that anybody actually does. So when we started dating and he was talking about how this was what he wanted to do, I thought, "You can't really mean that." And, he'd talk about auditioning for shows. And I thought of all the shows that I had heard of that are questionable in nature, and I thought, well, what kind of shows are you going to audition for? And so I started to feel really nervous, and it actually caused a lot of tension in our dating, which was a real challenge. But I was so drawn to this person, and I could see something in him. And I think when he auditioned for Savior of the World, it was the very first year that they were doing it in the brand new theater at the conference center, first production that was done there. And he went and auditioned and got cast as Joseph the carpenter. And I remember thinking, oh, well, if this is what he'd like to do with his talents, then that's a good sign. But I still didn't think that's what he was going to do. He was pre med at the time.
He'll come around.
Yeah, he had wanted to be a doctor from when he was younger, and then he got the performing bug in high school, and he has lots of uncles that are lawyers, and so we talked about maybe doing law school as well. So I thought, he's gonna come around. He'll do one of those things instead. And he was pretty convincing that, yes, that was a definite possibility. So it wasn't until after we were married, and he'd been praying about this for a long time, and it was really hard for him to do well, he felt, in both his theater classes and his pre-med classes, and he really wanted to be successful. And so he took it to the Lord, and he was praying really hard about it, and it wasn't until after we were married that he got that answer, and he thought, "Well, Heavenly Father, why didn't you tell me this before so I could be straightforward with my wife?" But, we've talked about it, and he views it as kind of similar to Joseph and Emma, and how Joseph couldn't receive the gold plates until he had married the right person, and Heavenly Father needed to make sure, not to talk myself up, but needed to make sure that he had somebody who could support him in the right way before he said yes to that career. And so, when Dallin came and told me that, at first I thought, oh yeah, of course that's the answer you you got because that's probably what you were listening for. Well, I'm going to go pray about it and I'll get my answer, which will be the true answer.
I love it.
Anyway, it was actually really remarkable. I went in there not thinking that there's any way that the Lord would actually want him to do that, but I got such a definite yes. I It was amazing to me. I I haven't really had very many experiences where an answer was that clear, and I think I needed that. God knew I would need that because it's been hard, and I went back to Dallin and was like, "Okay, this is what God wants you to do." So, yes, I think it really shocked him. But, and ever since then, we've prayed together instead of separately. I mean, sometimes we'll both have to pray on our own, but, it's that was an interesting and beautiful experience for the both of us.
It is a lot of risk. You're not sure exactly what life is going to look like. As a doctor, you kind of can plot that out pretty
Yeah.
well, but as an actor performer, it all comes to the opportunities that come your way. So, but I will correct you a little bit because you just shared how strong. I think the fire through your whole body was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
answer you got for
Yeah, that was
from
one
your
of those other
mother.
times.
So, okay, all right. So these are the 2 times. But it's funny to hear you say that because when I became more familiar, so I first saw you perform together singing at a steak house, or it was actually a ward house in front of a group of people. You wouldn't remember me, but I definitely remember you because you were the stars. And then the next time I met you, I say met you, saw you again, you were the celebrities, was when you were cast as Emma and he was Joseph in Nauvoo. And that was an incredible performance. Anybody who's seen that will know that's not insignificant for somebody to go through that and what you had to learn. So you're quite the actress as well and singer. So, at what point did you decide that it was going to be his career that you supported instead of your joint career? And sort of,
Wow.
because that seems to
The performing was never what I wanted to do professionally, remember?
okay,
I was an artist. I just
okay, yeah,
kinda
you're an
rode in on
artist. That's
his
right.
coattails. I think when they were developing the Navi pageant, he was invited because he knew the writers very well. The writer of the Navi pageant had been one of the writers had been involved in Savior of the World, and so Dallin knew him very well through that. So he invited Dallin to come do the workshop reading, and the person that they had reading for Emma was not able to come to that particular performance, so they invited me to come, and I was so thrilled because I loved theater when I was younger. I did a few plays in high school and college. It was the fun thing, it was this little I was such an amateur. But when I had that experience, I loved it so much, and I had always loved church history. My parents, one of the things they did was take us on church history tours when we were kids, and I went on a few of those and just loved church history, and so I was thrilled at the thought that I could do this, and Dallin had also been doing the Joseph Smith film right around the same time, and so both of us just loved Joseph and Emma and the early days of the restored church. And so I said, "Dallin, do you think there's any way that they would cast me, that they would consider me?" And so I went to the auditions and they cast me and I couldn't believe it because I'm really not one of those people. I'm not. I pretend. But thankfully they took a chance on me and it was just such a beautiful experience.
I just can't believe you can't believe it. I mean, and literally, I cannot believe that you cannot believe
Oh, you're
that.
so kind. You're so
No, you have it. I mean, you have enough self-confidence to do all the things you've already done, and to see you, you would not have known that there was one over another, and so I think that's very, very humble of you to say that because you really were, exceptional in every way, and I personally would have believed you could have done that, but nonetheless, let's fast forward a little more, and Dallin gets cast for a big part, a lead role in Les Mis, traveling Broadway performance show, and that's phenomenal. And so you traveled to 40 different cities, even to China with a newborn, on this tour. How did that sort of nomadic start to your life change your view of what home is going to look like going
My
forward?
goodness, that was such an experience. We didn't take our newborn to China. She did stay behind, but that was hard too. I was only gone for a week. Dallin was gone for 6 weeks, but I just popped over for a week so I could experience China. But that was so amazing, and it really we were such this little nuclear family, just the 3 of us in our little minivan traveling all over the country, and our daughter, she can't remember any of it, of course, but I think it really affected her, just her exposure to so many different places and things, and she was such a trooper in the car. She was really good at traveling. We just put on Riverdance CD, and her little feet would get bouncing, and she'd wanna hear the fast ones over and over again. So, it was a lot of fun. It really did make us feel more like home is where your family is, 'cause we would just stay in these little hotels with a kitchenette, and our daughter, when we finished tour, could not sit at a dining table because that just wasn't a thing. You eat wandering around the hotel room, sitting on the bed, or, sometimes there'd be a bar with a few tall stools, but there was no table, so it was really, really hard to have dinners when we got back. But we had a lot of fun. It was
Well, you know, from that point forward, you really were a big supporting cast for Dallin. And you talked about this parallel between Emma to Joseph and you to Dallin. Do you mind sharing that? Because that's pretty powerful, actually. And the fact that you were cast for Emma likely helped you to understand how best to help and support your husband.
Oh my goodness, yes, I have thought about that so many times. She's been my rock through a lot of the hard times. When we lived in New Jersey, we had kids that were in school, and Dallin got cast in another tour. We thought when we moved to the New York City area that he would get to be on Broadway, but no, he got cast in another tour, and we had never been apart as a family. I had always gone with him when he'd had shows in other cities, but this was just such a great opportunity, and he had just been working odd little jobs ever since we'd moved there, and we really, really needed a steady income. And so through a lot of prayer, we decided that he would go and I would stay and take care of the kids. Thankfully, with that show, he was able to come home between cities because they had longer stays than we did with Les Mis. With that one, it was like 1 to 2 weeks per city. This one was a whole month, and so he'd have extra travel days between cities, and he could come home for a day or 2 and spend some time with us. And there were times where that was really, really hard to be a single parent of children under the age of 8. I had 3, and then we had our 4th during that time, and I would look to Emma all the time and think, "If Emma could do this, so can I." If she could support her husband and share her husband with the world, because she really did. She had to share him with the whole church and with everything that he was doing, and he had to be separated from him and in circumstances that were far more trying than mine. I mean, there was never a time when my husband was in prison or, where his life was in danger. There was a time when he was in the hospital with serious stomach issues, and I was on the other side of the country and couldn't take care of him. So that was hard, but that's about as bad as it got. So, yes, I looked to Emma quite frequently for strength and inspiration.
And the next lady. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward, this is quite a role you had. Let me jump into something you've talked about before, and it is some of the struggles that you've had to endure as a mother to children. We always when they're young, it's easy. They go to primary, they do other things, and then they get older and they start to exercise their own agency. So you've been open about some of the struggles of your own children and with mental health and even some faith transitions. Are you comfortable with sharing that and sort of how you navigated that time or season or chapters of your life?
Yeah, I can share that. Yeah, Dallin and I have sometimes puzzled over why the Lord trusted us enough to send us 5 children that each, in their own unique way, had challenges. We've had kids with ADHD and autism and anxiety and depression. Several of them have had um, suicidal ideation and thoughts of self-harm. It's been hard and not what I expected. I expected my family to look very much like the one that I grew up in, which I felt was pretty ideal. And thankfully, my kids aren't into anything horrible. None of them have gotten involved in drugs or crime or anything like that. They're good kids. They just really struggle and they haven't been able to thrive in school, which was something that seemed to just be the way it was supposed to be for me and my siblings. And that I think started when these things started to reveal themselves as my kids were growing up and I started to recognize, okay, this is different. There was almost this period of mourning where I felt like maybe I'd done something wrong or feeling sorry for myself, or feeling sorry for my kids. And like I remember one time where my son was about to go on a trip with his band, and he was really having a huge anxiety attack. And they were supposed to be loading up the bus and getting on their way. And I took him to the school and I stood in the middle of the band room while all the other kids were laughing and talking with each other and getting their instruments into the trailer and talking with the band teacher. And my son, all he could do was stand in the middle of the room with his head down, staring at the floor. And I was trying to talk to him and encourage him and I just stopped and I looked around at all these other kids and I thought, I want my son to be that happy. I want him to have fun. I remember trips that I went on as a choir student, and I thought, why is my son being robbed of these experiences? He's not going to get to do this over again. This is high school. It's going to be over soon. And I just thought, why can't he have that childhood, that teenhood that was so fun and carefree in so many ways? And it was so hard. But then instead of comparing what his experience was to his peers or to myself, I started focusing more on just him and what his needs were and my other kids and just thinking about, well, this is them, This is them. And they're not supposed to be anything else. This is them. This is their life experience and it's still hard, but I think once I stopped feeling like it wasn't what it was supposed to be, it got a lot easier, and I could focus on what it is, and what can I do, and what does he need, or what does she need, and that made it easier.
Very raw. Thank you. There is a real loss when we have this sort of expectation that sits, you know, above where we are usually because we want everything for our children. And then we have to go through that. But I love how you dealt with that. You met them where they were and you decided that's who, there's no reason to compare because they're not like anyone else.
Yeah,
And so you met them where they were and you love them for who they are. And then, it seems like that's what our Heavenly Father does with us.
yeah,
He's really good at meeting us very much individually in the Savior Jesus Christ, that very intimate relationship. And I have to believe that your training and upbringing in the gospel helped you bridge that in so many ways. Mm, thank you. So you put your work, your creativity work on hold for a very long time. And now you're entering new chapters of your life. Kids are getting older and those sort of the young mother days are gone, sitting in the caravan, cruising all around. So what does your chapter look like? Were there things you're able to take off the shelf now and start to do for yourself and exercise your own talents and maybe the way you thought you were going to do many years ago?
yeah. Yeah, it's been really fun these past few years. I mean, I still feel like I have to spend a lot of my time mothering because I still have a couple kids at home, and even my adult kids still require a lot of attention. Um, but I have been able to do art on a bigger scale. I And it's shifted a lot too, which is interesting. I used to think, "Okay, once my kids are old enough, I'm going to get back into freelancing. I'm gonna do children's books and have a more robust career." But I actually started doing craft fairs a few years ago, and mostly just to sell my artwork, prints of my art. And then I thought, "Well, I like crafting too, so maybe I'll do a few crocheted things." And then I thought, "Well, I also like cross stitch. Let's start doing that." So anyway, I have this whole range. I just like making things, and so I've gone more the route of crafts and craft fairs. Still love to do art, still try and sneak it in there. I am also doing a few little freelance projects. I'm working with my sister on a graphic novel right now. She wrote a trilogy of, children's books. They're just fabulous. They're fun adventure fairy tale kind of stories, and I did the covers for those, and just about half a year ago, we said, "Well, what if we turn these into a graphic novel?" And that sounded really, really fun, so we've been working on that. So, yeah, it's a chapter that I've been looking forward to for a long time, but it's very different than what I thought was gonna happen. I'll take it. It's so much fun.
Well, I can just feel it, the enthusiasm in you. I'm just curious if our listeners were curious to find where that is. Do you have a website? Do you have an Instagram page?
Yes, I have a store website and a portfolio website. My portfolio is rachelbayles.myportfolio.com, and my storefront is Lady Rachel's Garden, and my sister is Rebecca J. Carlson, and her series is called Barley and Rye. There's 3 books in that series, and they're fabulous. And yes, you can get those on Amazon as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of the conversation. Thank you. I love the vulnerability and the kindness of giving all your time to us and sharing what it's like to be behind the scenes, but also what it's like to be in front and having to navigate that as well. So let's see. In those hardest seasons of your life, you've called the temple your safe haven. Tell us what that looks like for you. And we all have our own relationship with the temple. What does that mean to you?
I just can't describe the feeling that I get in there, and I feel like it was really proved to me a few years ago. My husband and I went through a really, really difficult time, and it was a very dark time. There were a lot of hard things going on with my kids. Dallin was really struggling with his own mental health and being so stretched thin. He was working way too hard at the time, doing shows and a full-time job and concert gigs, and he wasn't getting enough sleep, and so it was really, really hard, and I was really fearful of what the future would hold. But somehow through all of that, and especially when I would go to the temple, I would feel such peace and joy. And when I thought about what was in my head and my heart and all the things that I was dealing with on my long list of worries, I thought there is no way this list matches up with this feeling of peace and joy. It just they can't coexist. The temple must be the Lord's house, and God is real. And even when I was outside of the temple and I could still smile and feel joy and feel peace that everything was gonna be okay. I didn't know what okay was gonna look like, but I knew everything was gonna be okay. And that feeling was the strongest when I was in the temple. And so that got me through. That and listening to a lot of great Christian music and singing at the top of my lungs when I was driving by myself in the car. The temple was amazing, and I'm so grateful that before that happened, before I reached that point where I needed that proof, I had already made a habit of attending regularly. I when my youngest started kindergarten, I started going every other week. And then when Dallin was down doing Tuacahn in St. George and I was living in Orem, he started going every week. And I thought, oh, well, I can't let him one up me. So I started going every week. And it was just, that's just what I did. It was habit. And I'm so grateful that was already established. I might have thought to turn to that when things started to get bad, but the fact that it was already such a huge part of my life, I feel was such a blessing.
A wonderful testimony of getting to the house of the Lord as often as you possibly can, and it's wonderful to hear because you can just feel how the Spirit flows through you, Rachel. I mean, it's not not everyone has the same experience, right? So we honor everyone's different experiences, but I love how you expressed that gave you that peace and calm, even when the list just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then you find joy in all of that. That's wonderful. What a great testimony. Okay, so here's that last question that we offer to most of our guests, and that is sort of if you've got these return missionaries navigating their next chapters of their life and you've served your mission, you know what that's like. You know, it's not always exactly like it's going to play out.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give them more broadly to help them to navigate those chapters?
I think some of the most important advice I can give is to be patient and to be curious. I think that when we are supposed to think about the future, it's important for us to make plans and to look ahead and to prepare for the future, but we don't know what it's gonna be like, and if we get too clear of a picture, then, like I mentioned earlier, you can get disappointed and feel like something's gone wrong or maybe this isn't right. So, to just be patient and watch how things unfold, to take each day as it comes, to know that you can't accomplish everything in a single day, but to give yourself time and patience, and when things get hard, if we can learn to turn our worries and our fears into curiosity, how is the Lord going to solve this problem? Let me watch. I'm really curious to see how God's going to work this one out. And then move forward and do what we can and watch that beautiful plan unfold. I think that's how we make it through this life, every bit of it.
Fantastic advice. Rachel, we love you. We admire you.
Oh, thanks.
You are
Love you too.
truly an elect lady yourself, and we're learning from you always. Thank you for giving your time to us, and have a great rest of the chapters of your life as you navigate them.
Thank you.
All right. See you.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guest. Remember to follow us on Instagram at rmnextchapters. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send it to rmnextchapters@gmail.com. See you soon.